Hey there, hunters. Welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Again, apologies for my audio. I'm doing this at work. I'm moving. Bear with me. But today we're going to have a unfortunately long video as we finally talk about and cover gunning in Monster Hunter 4U for both light and heavy bowgun. Decade late, dollar short, I know, but I still want to put something out there so people can have like a quick reference video for gunning information if anyone wants to get into it. Also, just a note, I do have written guides on my Discord for installing and setting up 4U on Citra for your PC with all the associated files and mods as well. And I'm going to have all the information for, actual like motion values and stuff like that in the links in the description below. So just get it there. This is just more for a quick reference for everything. But yeah, we need more people to play 4U, so hopefully getting some info out there helps. Alright, with that out of the way, bear with me, grab a drink, and let's get into gunning. To start, I do want to discuss the overall feel and experience of playing Gunner in 4U, and this is just more my personal notes and opinions on the matter. Starting with heavy bowgun, I personally love it in 4U. It's not the strongest weapon in this game, as Greatsword, Charge Blade, and Insect Glaive are just kind of insane in 4U, and heavy bowgun in general does have slower kill times unlike the 140 guild quests and other event monsters by almost a minute in some cases, but it is still a very strong and fun weapon to play. Critical distance in 4U provides some amazing player feedback with the screen shakes and the bleed effects, and landing those good critical distance shots just feels amazing. Like, I can't get enough of it. That being said, there are still two big problems with heavy bowgun in 4U. The first is that monsters are incredibly fast in 4U, especially when you start getting into the end of G rank and guild quests, which can be very overbearing to the player who's playing, heavy bowgun. It's slow. Also, with gunner defenses and the overall low mobility, it's just a recipe for disaster when you're playing heavy bowgun. Because of this, I don't think heavy bowgun actually feels all that good until you can start fitting evade extender onto your armor sets. I find it almost mandatory to play heavy bowgun in 4U, but again, that's probably more of just a personal choice. The second problem though is that ammo is fairly limited. There's a good chance that you won't have enough ammo to get through event quests or end of G rank scroll quests or guild quests. You're going to need to take care of your shots or invest into like Combo Pro to make sure you have enough ammo, because you craft a random amount of ammo and it's kind of inconsistent. Monster HP also gets really high in 4U, and there are times where, it's just too much. This is also one of the reasons why elemental gunning wasn't really a thing in 4U. Those 2 points aside, heavy bowgun does provide very high damage at extremely long ranges if the player can read the monster patterns and avoid getting one-tapped. Heavy bowgun also has siege here in 4U, which is very strong. Not so much when you're playing solo, but against large monsters like Ren and Dalmador, it's great and you get to use siege a lot. But the only other good opportunities you're going to have when solo is if you get a trap or a mount in. So don't discount siege, but don't think you're just going to be able to use it all the time like siege, valor, heavy bowgun, and GU. Because here in 4U, you can't roll and slide in and out of siege like you could in GU. I mean, you can, it's just slow and doesn't have any iframes. Anyway, next, light bowgun. It's honestly mostly doom and gloom here. Light bowgun unfortunately just doesn't deal enough damage in like the guild quest hunts and like other solo G-rank hub stuff to be able to just get through it all with, one type of ammo, especially, elemental ammo. And because of that, it has to stick to using raw ammos most of the time, just because you can carry more ammo, and then you're directly competing with heavy bowgun for raw damage, and I mean, come on, you can't really do that. Now, while light bowgun does have amazing mobility still, most of the bowguns you actually craft do lack raw and have pretty low damage, so hunts do tend to take significantly longer with light bowgun. Rapid fire also is quite the handicap at times because it locks you into your firing animation for a very long time, especially with shot booster. And as I mentioned, monsters move very fast in 4U, so you don't really get many opportunities to rapid fire shots safely unless you get a topple or a mount or other crowd control effects like paralysis and traps. Light bowgun is extremely effective in group play as rapid fire status ammo does go a long way, but really in solo play, there's not much that light bowgun can do that heavy bowgun just doesn't do better. It just walks faster. So I'm not a huge fan of light bowgun in 4U. It's not horrible, I just prefer heavy bowgun. And then the only other issue with gunning in 4U is that we really only have one ammo type that we're going to be using, which is Pierce. We'll talk more about ammos in just a second, but basically we're just using Pierce as much as we can. So there's not much room for variety, which is kind of lame, but also does make gearing pretty easy. So with my impressions of the bowguns out of the way, let's get into breaking down their components. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you all know how to point and shoot a gun. This isn't a weapon tutorial, but do remember to go into your options and change your camera swing settings if you want. I just play with the defaults. But the first thing we're actually going to be talking about here is the ammo that we can use in 4U, which is what's going to determine what weapons and armor skills you want to use as well. So bear with me because talking about the ammo is always the longest part. Normal ammo. Okay, here we go. Not great, not bad. You still want normal shots for monsters that only have one good gunner hit zone, like, or some small monsters like Garuga, Kechawacha, Kutku, the Dromes. You get the idea, small stuff. Early game, normals are fine. It's the late game where they become more niche. The motion values on them are posted here, and the critical distance for normals is pretty much point blank to about 4 to 6 rolls away, depending if you're using normal 2s or normal 3s. It's pretty far, which is great, but you're never going to want to use normal 1s unless you absolutely have to. Those things are so bad. I usually rather just abandon the quest than, use normal 1s. Normal 2s are going to be your bread and butter, standard, nothing special ammo, but they get the job done. You're going to use them for a lot of the game. Normal 3s are actually very bad as well here in 4U. The shrapnel tends to only hit huge targets like Dalmador and Daren Moran, but even of these fights, you really don't want to rely on normal 3s as they are still insanely unreliable, and Pierce is just better. The only upside to normals is that you can carry 99 of them and you can craft hundreds more, so there's just plenty of ammo. They're also cheap to make, which is an issue early on for sure. Next is the pellet ammo, which is just bad here in 4U. The motion values are surprisingly fine, and with a 20% boost from the spread up skill, it's not awful. You'd think 5 motion values on 4 hits for pellet 2s is pretty good. That's twice a normal 2, right? But unlike other Monster Hunter titles, 4U basically has no good magnet zones for monsters, so really your damage isn't going to be anywhere near that good. More often than not, you're only going to hit 1 pellet on a good zone and the rest on random parts, which just basically means you're going to do no damage. Like even notoriously good magnet monsters such as Kirin or Zenogre just don't magnet well. You're better off just running normals on these monsters, as you're going to be able to do more damage with precise normal 2 hits on the weak spots. And like the random spray and pray nature of pellets is there, so you can save some time by not having to aim. But in 4U, the critical distance of pellets is actually much smaller, and you do really have to be in very specific spots to land all your pellets. You can't really just point and blank them, or even shoot them from far range. You have to be at like a very specific medium distance. Because if you're up close, the pellets don't hit anything right in front of you. You have to be at least a roll away from the monsters. So pellets they're not that great. They don't do that much damage. They don't magnet. And you can't just dump them without aiming. So yeah, the only use I see for these things is super early game before we have access to, like good rapid fire normal 2s or siege normal 2 options, and we don't have access to Pierce. Maybe you could just slap in some pellets. Yeah, that's about it. Speaking of Pierce though, Pierce MO, it's always the king, and 4U is no different. Pierce MO does very, very high damage in 4U, and the tick rate is pretty fair. So that even stuff like Pierce 1 can usually get 2 good hits on a hit zone as long as it's remotely good size, not like a foot or something. But it automatically makes it better than normal 1s like 99% of the time, because 1 hit of a Pierce 1 on a good hit zone is the same as throwing a normal 2 at it. And then you get the 2 other hits from the Pierce that can hit, even bad hit zones, and you're still going to get almost double the damage of a normal 2. And all of the Pierces are good, by the way. Pierce 1 being 10x3, Pierce 2 being 9x4, and even Pierce 3 being 8x5. I mean, they're just good damage across the board for the monsters that you can fit it on. And for the most part, Pierce 1 work on pretty much all monsters, except for like some of the really small ones where you want to use normals. But Pierce 2 are still great for backup ammo when you're out of Pierce 1, as well as for larger monsters such as Rajang, where the entire body is fairly weak to raw, Gravios to get through that juicy belly, and all the big ass monsters. Pierce 3 is typically safe for just the really big monsters like Gogmazios, Dalmador, and Daren, but those are relatively common fights to be honest, so you're going to be using it a lot still. Pierce critical distance, not as forgiving as normals, but their effective range is still very good. Basically, you gotta be between like 3 and 6 rolls away from the monsters, very far distance, you can't be close, and you can actually even extend this more with trajectory, which is the only downside to Pierce, because monsters are going to be right up in your face a lot of the time, so you have to get away from them to get the good damage in. But honestly, you'll get used to it, but Pierce is going to be our go-to ammo, just keep that in mind. Pretty much everything we want to do is with Pierce. Moving on to elemental ammo, it's not awful, but we just don't get to carry a lot of them unfortunately, so it's hard to want to use them. The motion values are okay, 7 raw, 45 element, but they're all single hit here in 4U. We don't have any like elemental pierce like in other titles. Dragon still pierces, but that's even more limited in use. And being able to craft just 20 extra more of these emos on a hunt is just not enough for how much HPs monsters have in G rank. So when you run out of elemental ammo, you have to fall back on normals, and they just feel awful. Heavy Bowgun clearly won't have enough ammo to get through a hunt, and investing into elemental is a waste of time because of it. You're gonna have to fall back onto like pierce or normals anyways, and then those aren't gonna do enough damage. And elemental just doesn't do enough to be good on its own, nor does it do enough to justify investing into and then weakening your raw ammo. So unfortunately, heavy bowgun, it's just raw. Light bowgun is better off since it does have rapid fire, which is effectively doubling your ammo you have, but as I mentioned before, being locked into those rapid fire animations feels really bad for you, and it will make you spend a lot of time positioning and waiting for those good moments rather than just firing constantly with non-rapid fire shots, and so it just takes a lot of time. So yeah, just not really a fan of elemental, and really I'm not really going to be using it. I'm not going to tell you much more about it, so yeah, moving on. Next is explosive ammo. Now explosives don't scale in older games. Crags, or sticky, wyvern shot, and clusters do fixed damage plus some fire. But because of the fixed damage, it makes them really great in low rank where monsters have very little HP, and I guess you can use them in high rank village as well, since monsters can be mostly taken down with just clusters. But in G rank and hub, monsters just have too much HP, and you're not going to be able to get through hunts with clusters and crags. There's just not enough ammo, they don't do enough damage. So largely, they're ignored. Crag are still good since they do provide KO, which is very nice, but for damage, we're not touching explosives. And that leaves us with status ammo. Status is good if you can use status ammo to get in one application quickly, then it's going to be worth it. And by that I mean, if you can apply a status without having to reload, then do it, otherwise don't bother. Because unlike 5th gen gunning, swapping ammo makes it not loaded anymore, so if you swap from like Pierce to Para ammo, you're going to have to stop and reload your now empty clip, get the paralysis off, then swap back to Pierce, reload, and by then you're probably only going to get a few shots in before the monster breaks free. So if you have to keep reloading your status ammos to get like one application in, it's just not worth the time. You're going to spend more time trying to apply the status than you would, have the downtime for the status. Status ammos in general have much higher recoil and reload requirements anyways, so most of the guns don't even shoot them properly without armor skill investments. Light bowgun can actually make better use of them for you since they do have the silencer mod attachment to reduce your recoil by 1, and that's where light bowgun does shine actually, is status light bowgun here and for you, but that's about it. And then for slice ammo, which is like something pretty much exclusively for light bowgun because of Regios' light bowgun, which we'll talk about in a minute. Slice ammo is very strong. Not only is it doing cut hit zone damage, which automatically have better hit zones than gunner spots, but also it's an 8x3 hit, which is 24 damage, which is pretty nice. The rapid fire on them actually does pretty much full damage, so when you get bonus shot and you're starting shooting 3 of these out, you do a lot of damage with slice, and you can carry like 60 of them, so 60 rounds plus rapid fire, that's a lot of slice. You can totally build around slice, and we're going to. Slice is very strong. Alright, that's enough talking about ammos. The TLDR is that we're going to be using Pierce. Pretty much exclusively we want Pierce. It's just too good for you. We will have some fallback options like slicing or normals, but let's go ahead and talk about the bowgun mods and attachments. So as you may already know, bowguns get attachments and mods in pretty much every Monster Hunter game. Fun times. Here in 4U, we have a few different options, so let me explain what each of these do. On heavy bowgun side, the first mod is the shield mod, which attaches a shield and will automatically block for you if you're not firing. You do need to be very careful when using a shield mod because there is significant delay between shooting and when the shield actually becomes active. So if you want to use a shield, get used to that timing. It also has a very narrow effectiveness range, so you can't block from the sides or from the back obviously. You gotta point your gun at the attack or the monster. You can build around heavy bowgun for sure using like guard up skills if you like, and then even using the special hone properties in 4U to give health augment to the bowgun to help sustain some of the chip damage you're going to receive. Going this route does lose you out on quite a bit of damage, but it's relatively safe. And I say relatively because there's a lot of pin attacks in 4U, and blocking doesn't help against those. And also, even if you do fully invest in guard skills, you're still going to be taking huge chunks of HP on every block. So you can't just sit behind a shield and call it a day. It works, but it's not foolproof. So while I don't really recommend using a shield, I think evading is easier and safer, you definitely can go that route if you want. Next we have the power barrel, and this is the other option you can put on your heavy bowgun in place of the shield, so you get one or the other. Power barrel provides the heavy bowgun with 10% increased draw, which is a lot of raw. At the end game level, this is equal to and sometimes better than like Attack Up XL. So yeah, it's a huge chunk of damage. I always recommend putting the power barrel on over the shield, not only because of the extra raw, but the shield also has to invest in guard skills and it's still not super safe, while power barrel can just go evade exchanger and then you're kind of safe. And so you just get more skills and you get more damage out of it. Then we have the variable zoom scope, and all this does is allow you to move your aim by zooming in and out while looking down the scope. Personally, I don't use this at all. I mostly just hold to aim, and I don't particularly like being in first person. And if you played Iceborne Scope, it's basically that, but it doesn't provide any extra damage. It's just the visual thing. So if you like the hard scope, you might as well put a variable scope on. It's not that big of a deal. I just don't use it. Lastly, we have the limiter. For the heavy bowgun, the limiter removes your ability to siege ammunition, but does provide the ammo you could have sieged with 2 more rounds per clip. So if you had a clip 8 of normal 2s that you could siege, you'd instead have a clip 10 of normal 2s, but no longer be able to siege those. Not only does it get rid of your siege, but it does also provide the heavy bowgun with about 12.5% more raw on top of the power barrel. So between the two of those, you could go from like a 300 raw heavy bowgun to like a 366 raw. It's a lot of damage. Now there is still some consideration here, it's not just a done deal. While 4U monsters do move very fast, and for the most part they don't give the player much opportunity to siege, there are still plenty of cases where you would want to siege. Large monsters like Gog and Domador are prime targets for siege ammo. But also, if you're playing in groups where you can rely on mount topples, status effects, and traps, you have plenty of time to set up siege and to just nuke monsters. So while raw is great, and I like the limiter removal, it's not always going to be the right answer. And when we get into the actual bowguns we're going to be using, we'll discuss the options for both siege and non-siege. Now for the light bowgun mods, we have 2 barrel options of which we can pick one. We can either put on a suppressor or a long barrel. The suppressor reduces threat generation, which honestly I doubt you're going to notice in that it obviously does nothing in solo play, but in group plays it does make monsters target you less often, but yeah, good luck with that. But it also reduces your recoil level by 1, which is why we use it. This is great for using like rapid fire ammos, status ammos, explosive ammos, and even pierce early on when you don't have good recoil on your bowgun, because obviously these typically have worse recoil by default, and this could save you points in having to put into recoil on the armor skills. Typically this is always going to be the better option until you get into like endgame gearing where you just sacrifice the armor skill for more raw, because if you don't put on the suppressor you can put on the long barrel, and the long barrel, like the heavy bowgun's power barrel, just increases your raw, though it is less than heavy bowgun. It's only a 7.5% raw increase. It's not as good, but it's still more damage, and light bowgun needs all the damage it can get. So if you don't need the recoil, like especially if you're running normals and such, then you always go with the long barrel. Variable scope is the same here on light bowgun, and lastly we have the limiter removal. Now what the limiter removal for light bowgun does is that it removes your ability to rapid fire, which I don't see as a big deal because those opportunities are pretty scarce in G rank. Like heavy bowgun, it does give you 2 extra shots on all the ammo that you could have rapid fire, which is nice. Light bowgun can get some pretty meaty clip sizes because of that, but it doesn't give you any raw like heavy bowgun's limiter removal. Instead of providing raw, you can now press X and A to reload all your ammo at once and keep it loaded while you're doing ammo swap. So this is kind of the default style for 5th gen gunning where ammo is just always loaded, but it's a feature here for light bowgun and 4U. Now this reload is always slow, so you can't really fix that with armor skills or make it any better, which is good and bad I guess, you don't have to invest into it, but it is still faster than loading multiple ammos at a time. So if you're going to be using multiple ammos, like multiple elemental types or Pierce 1, 2, and 3, this is great. So here in these clips, I'm using a Pierce light bowgun that can effectively shoot Pierce 1, 2, and 3 without reloading any of them, and then do one big reload when I get some time. You can still reload one ammo manually if you want though. Now for me personally, I think this is the best playstyle for light bowgun and 4U. It's significantly safer than rapid fire, and it actually allows different playstyles so you can now ammo swap freely and shoot like you could in 5th gen, and so you can build around actually using multiple types of ammos. So if you get into the post-game grind with light bowgun, I do highly recommend going for limiter removal setups, unless you're going to use rapid fire slice of course, you always want rapid fire slice. Alright, so that's the bowgun mods. We've covered the ammo and what attachments we're going to use on the bowguns. Let's go ahead and talk about the bowguns and the bowgun progression. And we're going to start with heavy bowgun. Here in low rank, we have 2 bowguns we want to make. The bone heavy bowgun, which should be craftable right after your first few gathering quests, I'm sure. This is a standard normal bowgun. This can be upgraded into the Tetsukaba's straw drum cannon heavy bowgun super early on. That bowgun has a clip 4 of Pierce 1, it has normal 2s and pellet 2s. It has a good variety of ammo that you can use on all types of monsters, and has really good raw for its rarity. You can then upgrade this into the Rathian heavy bowgun in low rank for the best normal bowgun that you're going to have for a while. Super easy to craft, you're going to fight Rathians, it's good. And the Rathian's heavy bowgun should last you through mid-high rank if you just keep upgrading it, but you're going to be stuck using normals exclusively with this thing. On the other side of low rank bowguns, you're going to be crafting the Argyros heavy bowgun, which is another normal 2 bowgun with pretty good raw. But this one also sieges pellet 2s, which is pretty effective in the early game despite pellets being pretty bad. You can make this by trading Tetsukabra pieces to the White Coon. So really either way you're going to kill a bunch of Tetsukabras. And we're going to want this bowgun because it's going to upgrade into the Nersilla's bowgun, which is a decent normal 2 bowgun, but we don't really care about that. We care about it because it's going to upgrade into the Gravios bowgun in high rank. I know all these bowguns are just normal 2 for low rank, but honestly, you don't need or want to use other ammos in low rank. Farming latch berries to support Pierce ammo and buying Pierce ammo is such a pain, and you're better off saving your money in the early game so you can afford basic supplies and upgrades. Money's going to be rather scarce if you buy Pierce ammo early on, so just stick to normal 2s. When you get into high rank, you're probably going to be using the upgraded Rathian bowgun, as Nersilla's is going to fall off, and you're going to use that until you get your next set of weapons, all of which are going to be available mid-high rank. Nersilla's bowgun will upgrade into the Gravios bowgun, which is going to be your go-to Siege, Pierce 2, and Pierce 3 bowgun for the entire game. It's excellent at dealing with Darren Moran, Dalmador, and Gogmazios, which are going to be your Urgents, so make sure you get this gun to use for them. Really, the raw and such doesn't matter that much. I mean, it's good, but because this is the only bowgun in the game that's going to be able to Siege Pierce 2 and Pierce 3 once it's upgraded, it's just kind of one of a kind, so we got to use it. And then the extra bonus is that it does Siege Fire MO2 once it gets upgraded, and so that's nice as well, because we will actually use that for Gogmazios. Now, Gore Magala, who didn't have a heavy bowgun in low rank, does have one in high rank, with good raw, 20% affinity, a slot. It's just a really good starting point. This can Siege normal 2s and Pierce 2s right out of the box. It's an excellent normal 2 bowgun, which is what we want to use it for, but it's nice that you have Pierce as backup so you can deal with some of the bigger monsters and use that on topples. Transitioning from normal to Pierce can be kind of costly and take a while because you have to make whole new sets, and you may not have enough latchberries or fish to maintain Pierce, so Gore is great to have early on when you can just fall back on normal 2s and keep going with those. Lastly, we have the Syad Cannon, which is Seregios' heavy bowgun. This bowgun does it all, just like Steve's bow. It uses Pierce 1 and Pierce 2, the 2 best demos in the game. It has great raw, a slot, and the icing on the cake, it has roll to reload as Seregios' skill for bowguns. So every time you evade, you reload 1 round into the chamber, which is pretty amazing. Unfortunately, this weapon has high recoil, so you can't actually fire Pierce without having recoil down 1 on your armor set, so you will need to make a whole new set of armor for this bowgun. So as I mentioned, the transition from normal to Pierce can be a little awkward. Now typically when we go for the Seregios heavy bowgun, we also start getting into evade extender, as evading will be our primary defense, and now be part of our offense as well, as it's going to reload our rounds and help us to keep our damage up. So we're going to be prioritizing evading, running evade extender, no shield mod, and just rolling around, and this heavy bowgun just comes together very nicely and makes this whole highly mobile heavy bowgun experience just great. While not as overwhelmingly dominant as the Seregios bow, you definitely want to use this as your primary bowgun going forward until basically the end of the game. From here on, pretty simple. We got these 3 bowguns, the Gravios, the Gore, and the Seregios, and we're going to make these in high rank and go through the entire game with them. Gravios bowgun is going to upgrade all the way to the Black Gravios Giga Cannon by the end of G rank, and this gains, Siege Pierce 3, Siege Pierce 2, Siege Fire, and this is going to be your big boy bowgun. Gore Magala's heavy bowgun is going to upgrade into Shagaru Magala's bowgun, which is your premier normal 2 with and without siege for monsters that have smaller hit zones, and Zinogre Head, Garuga Face, and stuff like that. Not super important, but it is good to have so you don't get stuck using Pierce on bad hit zone monsters or monsters that just really don't want to be pierced. And lastly, we have the Seregios bowgun for the most of your hunts. So this is going to upgrade from high rank all the way through the end of the game. It's going to be your Pierce 1 and 2 heavy bowgun with limiter removal, since we're not going to want to siege when we can just roll to reload. Lots of damage, and the Pierce will shred through pretty much every monster on the roster. You can craft G-Rank Crimson Fatalis' bowgun at the end of the game, the Destiny Arm, for another Pierce option, as it can use 6 Pierce 1, 2, and 3 while having Siege Pierce 3, and has 2 slots. It can make slightly better armor sets, and it does have better recoil compared to Steve's, so you don't need to have recoil down 1, but you do miss out on roll to reload, which honestly is pretty comfy and I don't really like going without it. Now regarding relic heavy bowguns, yes, if you min-max relic heavy bowguns, they definitely are better than what you can craft. For reference, Seregios' heavy bowgun sits at 300 base raw, 10% affinity, 1 slot, and high recoil, while a relic bowgun can have 340 raw, negative 10% affinity, which isn't that big of a deal, and up to 3 slots, and above average recoil. So not only do you get more raw, which is boosted by your power barrel and limiter removal, but you can also get 3 slots, which is big for armor set making, as well as not having to need recoil down to shoot the Pierce. So you're going to give up on roll to reload, which is big, but you do get a lot of raw and more set making potential out of it. So yeah, they're not like leagues above Steve's heavy bowgun or even Gravios's, but they're definitely good. I don't think farming them is necessary, as they don't provide too much alternative gameplay like Bow being able to run spread element bows, but if you're going to edit them in, yeah, they're still a pretty good option. So that's all the heavy bowgun progressions that you're going to need. Don't worry about much else, and let's move on to light bowgun. Progression with light bowgun is a little bit more complicated because you need to chase extra raw and rapid fire, which is great early game where monsters are slower and you can save money on crafting. Also, we don't want to be using elemental bowguns because they're just not that great and they take a lot of resources to craft, and we don't want to bother with that. So we're going to be going with raw gunning here, just like the heavy bowgun. So let's start with the default crossbow gun. This is going to be your standard nothing special bowgun, but we're going to use it for normal 2s. But this bowgun does upgrade through the entire game, either into the Rathian or Rathalos' light bowgun, and then you can go into Gold Rathian's light bowgun. So, I mean, this one can be used through the entire game while you're gathering materials for your other crafts. Rathian's light bowgun will rapid fire normal 2s, and you can keep it that way if you're going to go into Pink Rathian or even Rathalos' upgrades. But the Prosperity bowgun from Gold Rathian becomes an excellent Pierce bowgun at the end game, and it can use all the Pierces very well, though not rapid fire. So yeah, crossbow gun and low rank, all the way until Rathian low rank, and just take it through the end of the game. Good setup there. Now for the other light bowgun options for the early game, we're going to have the Velocidrome and Great Jaggy bowgun. Velocidrome starts out as whatever, but it can upgrade a few times into low rank and early high rank, so the raw does keep up. But it doesn't do anything special, no rapid fire things, we're just going to use it to throw normal 2s. So if you don't want this, fine, we're going to drop it in the early high rank anyway, it's just a decent option early on. Likewise, the Great Jaggy's bowgun is good because this is going to be your first rapid fire Pierce 1 bowgun once you get it upgraded one time. And in early high rank, it's going to rapid fire Pierce 2s and let you normally fire Pierce 1s. It's a good early game option, and we do need something to help us in early high rank, specifically because most of our next bowguns are going to be late high rank, so you need something to get through high rank. But yeah, we're going to be dropping both of these guns once we make our next set. Moving on to high rank, early high rank we're going to be using Rathian's bowgun, great, use that. But you can also make the Cross Blitz bowgun once you get some early gathering quests done and get some high rank ores. This is going to be a solid rapid fire normal 2 light bowgun that you can use to make the rest of the high rank weapons, or just use Rathian's bowgun if you got that. Either way, we're going to be dropping this instantly once we're done with high rank, so it's only for, mid-high rank. Next, let's address the elephant in the room, the Rasasa bowgun from Seregios. This, like all gunner weapons, is what you're going to want to aim for once you get to high rank. Steve's bowgun provides us with invaluable roll to reload, rapid fire normal 2s, as well as rapid fire slice. Now, this is special because rapid fire slice is so much better than other rapid fire MOs. It's quicker, it does almost full damage on the 2-shot burst, but it upgrades into a 3-shot burst, and then you can get, shot booster on top of that. It's just an extremely effective rapid fire bowgun, and slice does really solid damage for you. So with this bowgun, you're going to have better hit zones at your disposal since, cut zones are always better, and you're going to have plenty of ammo thanks to rapid fire, and even if you run out of slice, you're going to fall back on rapid fire normal 2s anyways. Rapid fire slice is also just much safer to use compared to like bonus shot normals that fire 5 shots, it just takes too long. So yeah, Steve bowgun, you'll love it, it's great, use it and farm your other Pierce bowguns, but you can use this for the rest of the game if you want. Speaking of Pierce bowguns, we do got some trades to make. Both Barioth and the Lagiacrus bowguns will be traded through Gravios and Archalala pieces to the White Coon. You can make one or both of these bowguns, but they do fulfill similar roles. And that is just that we want a good Pierce bowgun. Barioth's light bowgun can rapid fire Pierce 1s and shoot Pierce 2 and Pierce 3s, has good raw, has affinity, but no slots. It's a solid Pierce option, but Lagiacrus' light bowgun can rapid fire Pierce 2s, has more raw, slightly less affinity, and 2 slots. So you have the choice between either rapid firing Pierce 1s with Pierce 2 and Pierce 3 as backup, or rapid fire Pierce 2 with not much room for backup, but more raw and slots. And then when you upgrade these into the G-Rank versions, they're going to be more or less the same, but now you also have the option of using Gold Rathian's Prosperity as the bowgun for no rapid fire Pierce, and just straight shoots Pierce 1, 2, and 3. Remember that limiter removal does not increase your raw, it only gives you 2 extra rounds to your rapid fire ammo. So if you want to do a quick side-by-side for these, the main difference between the 3 bowguns are that, Prosperity has 3 slots, which is great, 20 more raw than Barioth's, no affinity, but it does shoot 5, 6, and 6 shots of Pierce 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Barioth's light bowgun has no slots, has the lowest raw, does have 30% affinity, but it can either rapid fire Pierce 1 or have clip 6, 6, and 5 of Pierce 1, 2, and 3. And Lagiacrus', which is the most raw at 310, 2 slots, 20% affinity, but only has clip 3 of Pierce 1 and either clip 5 or 7 of Pierce 2 if you want to rapid fire it or not. So they're all pretty close. Really, it's kind of up to you and what you want to use in the end for your Pierce light bowgun. Now another thing mentioned here is the God's Isle. This is a rusted weapon you can get from mining, and it's mostly a bad bowgun with absolutely no damage output whatsoever, but it does have level 2 para and sleep shots, as well as all the crag and clusters. So this is a status gun. If you're going to be playing in groups, you can run God's Isle to do status setups and just lock down monsters with chains of KO, paralysis, sleep, traps, you name it. It's the best weapon in the game for that. It's just not really something you want to be using on your own because clusters aren't enough to get through G-Rank hunts in a timely manner anyways, especially if you're doing your hub stuff solo. But this will be obtained in high rank and you can upgrade it through the end of G-Rank, but honestly, if you're not really doing much damage with it, the upgrades doesn't really matter. it's a status bowgun. So by the end of G rank, you're going to want to have Sergio's bowgun for your slice and normal option, some Pierce bowgun, whichever one you want, and probably the white Fatalis absolute bowgun. This bowgun can rapid fire all the elemental ammo, as well as it having a small clip of rapid fire Pierce 1 as backup, which is probably the best backup option you're ever going to have, to be honest. So it's a good general purpose elemental bowgun if you want to go that route. I personally don't think elemental gunning is all that great here in 4U, outside of some extremely niche situations, but if you want to give it a go, this is a good bowgun to have on hand for that. And lastly, in G rank, relic light bowguns. So in a similar situation to heavy bowguns, yes, they're good. They have 3 slots, they can open up a lot of armor sets, but they also have very solid raw at 340 base raw with negative affinity. And you can pretty much get any shot pattern you want. So specifically for light bowguns, I will say that it's pretty much better to run a relic light bowgun if you can, because most of the final upgrade light bowguns have extremely low raw, around 280 or so, and even the ones that are above like 310 are usually explosives or ones with really bad affinity and recoil. So I think you can just get a better relic light bowgun for pretty much any style of ammo shot compared to crafted bowguns, but honestly, it's a huge investment to grind. But yes, relic light bowguns are much better if you can use them. Okay, almost done. Let's talk about armor skills, and let's go down the priority of skills first that you're going to want to focus on and in what order, because set making in these older games is super RNG based upon whatever charms you get, so you're going to want to make the sets on the fly, but it's good to know what you should be prioritizing. Remember though, this is just a general list. It's not a set in stone list where you have to get something higher up before you get something lower. So, taking a look at this list, let's briefly cover the armor skills. Shot type up should be a no-brainer. It's mandatory. It's 10% damage. It's one of the biggest damage boosts you're going to get. Should always be your first pick. The only exception to that is in low rank and early high rank where you just don't have access to those skills. So you just put like attack up instead. Damage is damage though. Evade extender specifically for heavy bowgun. I know it's not mandatory, but trust me, it's a game changer for heavy bowgun. I can't play heavy bowgun without it. Weakness exploit is going to be your next biggest source of damage increase next to shot type up. So always try to get this one when you can, and you should always be hitting weak spots anyways. Bonus shot for light bowgun, until your extra shot for rapid fire ammos. I do love this for Sergio's light bowgun with the rapid slice, it's amazing. But for normals and Pierce, it's not really mandatory, as it is increasing your time per volley, which is kind of a pain. So just take caution when you get bonus shot. It's not a top tier skill for a reason. Along the same lines, recoil down, amazing skill, but we don't always need it. Sergio's heavy bowgun does in order to fire its Pierce 1, as well as the Gravios' heavy bowgun to siege the Pierce 2 and Pierce 3, but most other bowguns we're going to be using, relics included, don't need recoil down. Light bowgun as well probably doesn't need recoil as well, because you could just run a silencer. Challenger, amazing skill, lots of damage, but you're not going to be able to fit this onto your sets until you get like G rank for Rajang gear, so wait until then. High grade earplugs, also another amazing skill since monsters do roar a lot in 4U, and it's kind of hard to dodge them. The Garuga mask grants this entirely, so when you can get the Garuga mask, I do recommend fitting in this high grade earplugs. Ruthlessness is a very niche skill, but it's a good skill. When you get to the min-maxing state of using like relic charms and stuff, you can fit this on instead of just weakness exploit, but don't worry about it too much because crit isn't even that good for you. Attack up, you should always be trying to fit into your like skill as like your fill-in if you just have room to spare. More damage, which means firing less ammo. Evasion skills, not required, but I do like it on light bowgun since the Kuchala gear, which grants normal up, also gives evasion, so you can sneak it in early on if you want to, but otherwise, don't really bother with it. Combo Pro is another skill that people don't use, but I'm in love with. It's just making it so you can combine the max amount of ammo all the time for every combo, which just saves time crafting as well as gives you more ammo to get through those 140 quests. Trajectory, which increases your crit distance, is pretty nice, but crit distance is pretty forgiving here in 4U, but sometimes it's easier just to slot that in rather than chase a monster or roll a few times. It can save some time, which means it's more DPS technically, but yeah, not mandatory. Lastly, Tremor Res, there's a lot of tremors in 4U, so if you can spare the 5 deco slots to gem it in, great, do it. Okay, that's a pretty self-explanatory list of armor skills, I think. Those are the ones that I would use and what I would look out for when making gunner sets for 4U. Speaking of, let's just move on to the armor progression for here in 4U so we can wrap this up. These sets are either going to be using basically no charm, like a blank charm, like no charm at all, or a 2-slot charm for high rank and maybe a 3-slot charm for G rank. No actual armor skills are going to be used on any of these charms. So let's take a look. To start with low rank, the bread and butter cut 2 and Velocitron set can get you attack up large if you just have a 1-slot weapon or charm somewhere. Otherwise, you may be stuck just running attack up medium for a few minutes until you get those. 20 extra raw is huge damage early on, so you're not going to get much better than that for a while, and pretty much every weapon in the game wants to start with this. Next, near the end of low rank, heavy bowgun can get an evade extender and normal up setup with no charm using a mix of Lagombi and Uragon pieces. It's a great set for early game if you're going to be using normal heavy bowgun. Now with similar Uragon pieces but with some Tigrix added into the mix, light bowgun can run a normal up and attack up medium instead of evade extender. Compared to the previous Cutku set, you're going to trade 5 raw to get more defense and 10% damage on top. It's a pretty good upgrade for light bowgun because they need all the help they can get. Getting into early high rank, unfortunately heavy bowgun won't be making much of a better set for a bit, so you may just have to upgrade your armor. Light bowgun though can run high rank, Cutku, and Rathalos pieces to make a decent set with normal up, weakness exploit, and attack up small. This is assuming you have a blank 2-slot talisman or an attack 2 charm, whatever. We're not immediately going for a bonus shot here since we only have rapid fire normals at this point, and getting 4 or 5 shots on that just kind of takes up too much time shooting in my opinion. I'd rather just have damage. Mid-high rank though, heavy bowgun will be able to make a nice set for the Regios heavy bowgun using evade extender, pierce up, and recoil down 1. This does require a blank 3-slot talisman though, which you may not have at this moment. If you happen to have a recoil down talisman or a pierce up, you should be fine with this. Otherwise, if you have a just blank 2-slot talisman, you can forego pierce up and get attack up medium instead. This is fine for now because you absolutely have to have recoil down to run Regios' heavy bowgun. Now, if you're getting into a Pierce light bowgun around this time, you can also make a similar set for light bowgun that runs Pierce up, recoil down, and attack up small. You don't need evade extender for light bowgun, so just all damage for the Pierce. This set only needs a 1-slot talisman and a 1-weapon slot, or you can just use a 2-slot talisman. Now, these are going to be your sets for higher rank with pretty much minimal charms. Once we get into early G rank though, G1 star, assuming that you did the village quest by now, heavy bowgun will be able to make a very solid Pierce set with a 2-slot charm. It's going to have Pierce up, evade extender, weakness exploit, and recoil down 1. These are going to be your 4 bread and butter skills for heavy bowgun. Anything more is just icing on the cake at this point. And this is with just a no skill 2-slot charm. You should have one now by early G rank. Now for the light bowgun, who might not be needing recoil down since you have a silencer attached, might be able to squeeze in Pierce up, weakness exploit, and attack up large on their Pierce light bowgun setup. Just all the damage. So obviously that was going to be for Pierce gunning in early G rank, because for the Rasasa bowgun, you can trade out Pierce up and get bonus shot, Wex, and attack up large. So this should be a lot of extra damage for your Regios light bowgun if you're going to rapid fire some slice. And again, this is all with the 2-slot charm. Now we're going to get into the end of G rank with 3-slot charms. Light bowgun running Regios' rapid fire slice can do something like this, where you have bonus shot, Wex, Challenger 2 instead of attack up large, and then you can also throw in high grade earplugs for some nice quality of life. If you're running a Pierce light bowgun, you can trade the bonus shot for Pierce up and do Pierce up, Wex, high grade earplugs, and Challenger 2. Though these ones do require a 3-slot charm though, so be wary of that. For heavy bowgun, we basically get the same 4 skills as before, but now we have enough slots to deco in one more quality of life skill that's, a 2-for-1 decoration, such as Combo Pro or Tremor Resistance. This set can change just the deco swap to cover both of those, which is kind of why I like it. And yes, you still only just need a 3-slot talisman and a 1-slot weapon, but of course Regios is a slotted weapon. Now if you're running normal heavy bowgun in G rank, and there's nothing wrong with that, you can get a lot of damage in by running something like normal up, weakness exploit, evade extender, and Challenger 2, since you don't need recoil for the normals. So with no real charm, you can actually make some really solid high damage bowgun setups. But what would it look like if you had God charms? Well, here, for the God charm min-maxing sets, Pierce heavy bowgun with your min-max setup could do Pierce up, Wex, recoil down, evade extender, Challenger 2, and still get high grade earplugs. That's a lot of skills. Normal heavy bowgun can't do much better, but you can remove the recoil down and get ruthlessness instead of just weakness exploit, which is crit I2 on top, so 15% more affinity. It's not much, but it's something. And with pretty much the same set for light bowgun, you can trade the evade extender for bonus shot. I'd still be careful with bonus shot, but you can slap it on there. And then again, same thing, if you just swap your charm from a normal charm to a Pierce charm, you can run Pierce setup and have bonus shot there. Now, if you get to the point where you're going to be running Relic God Charms and such, you could probably fine-tune the sets for more specific monster hunts where you would need Tremor Res or not, or Earplugs or not, or Combo Pro or not, and all that stuff. But these are going to be your general use sets that can be taken into pretty much every hunt. You just need to swap out a few things for your certain MO types. Anyway, there are some good general progression sets from base game all the way to min-max charms, and all this stuff should be pretty attainable. I think the hardest stuff to get is the Archon pieces, which is going to require you to do a lot of expeditions. But I think I've covered all the necessities for bowguns here in 4U. If you have any other questions or concerns, hit me up on Discord or something. I have the links in the description below if you need any of the reference material. But yeah, it's been a very long video, so that's gonna be all for me. Good luck gunning in 4U. Peace, and good luck out there, hunters.